Okay.
So basically, we're talking about writing across mediums here, Black women writing across different mediums, so transmedia in a sense. The common thread that brings us together is that we all write comics, and we are part of a newly formed group called the Black Female Comic Collective, the BFCC as we like to call it.
Collab.
And
Collab.
oh yeah, it's collaboration. Collaborate. You're right. So the Black Female Comic Collab, and they're going to talk about it. It is their brainchild, so obviously they know the name better than I do. um so when we get to that, that's going to go first, and then after that we'll start talking about writing across mediums, and even before that we're going to do some intros. So I'll go first. So I'm Allison, and some of you know me as Allison Chaney Whitmore. I'm the author of Love University, as well as the Raven Code that's going to be debuting with Subsume later this year. And I tend to write fantasy, supernatural, coming of age, period drama pieces. I also write in the spaces of novels, comics, and screenplays. If you were to ask me what my main thing is, I would say it's definitely screenwriting. So when we get into the writing across medium section, I'm going to be focusing on the film writing side because I have a film in production now, and I have another one going into production in the fall. And then I was just hired to write another one for next year. So I'm going to focus on that, even though, thank you, yay. Even though I'm still trying to break into TV, but Natasha knows that part better than I do because she's broken in. So she's going to talk about that. And Monique is the novelist. So she's going to hopefully talk about that. I don't know. So yeah, so that's my little intro. Do you girls want to go next?
Awesome. Hi, so I'm Natasha. I'm originally from what we call Do or Die Bed-Stuy, which is Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, New York. And I've been writing forever, and I feel like infinity. But you know, being where you're coming from and trying to get out of it, writing is not a career. So I spent a long time fighting against trying to how to figure out how to make this into a career, but finally I did it. I primarily, because of where I grew up, my family is from Barbados, but I grew up in a section of America that was heavily influenced by Black culture, American Black culture. So I primarily write characters that are dealing with identity issues, trying to figure out how they fit in to two different sides of themselves. And I specifically focus on genre writing. I love fantasy. That's where I tend to live. I also love romance. You put a romance in anything, I will watch it to the end. I really don't even care how bad or good it is. I just want to know what happens to that couple. And I am now venturing out into sci-fi, but I'm definitely a genre girl. I've been a genre girl for a really, really long time. And I am currently on a Netflix series called Virgin River, which is a romance drama. And like Allison, I think we pretty much write a lot of the same things. So even my last TV pilot, even though it has all those elements, it also was a period piece. So yeah, that's a little bit more about me.
Hello, Allison. Thank you for having me here. My name is Monique Fisher, and like the two of you, I've been writing for a really long time. I think I started writing when I was 10, and then I kind of came to the realization, oh, I could do this for a living. I didn't really start doing it seriously until college. I majored in theater arts and dance, with my concentration being on stage directing and playwriting. I ventured from there to trying to break into television writing, which is where I met Natasha. And oh my God, we've known each other
a long time.
I know.
I don't know how many years. So
almost 10. Almost 10.
Maybe 10. I don't know. You were in one of my first TV writing classes.
Yeah, I think we met like in 2014. So yeah, it's been a while. So Natasha and I are actually writing partners too.
Yes.
So I try to like separate it because I write comics and graphic novels, and those tend to be crime, supernatural, sci-fi, fantasy based, and those also are what I work on with Natasha, with the exception of a book that I have coming out that I will talk about in a minute. And then I also write novels, just like regular novels. And those are adult contemporary romance. So think in terms of Jasmine Guillory or Mimi Grace or Denise Williams, people like that. So that's I'm kind of working on both of those at the same time. And one of the projects that I have that's coming out is a graphic novel called Susan Keem. Her name is Suzanne. His name is Akeem, hence Susan Keem. And it's coming out. It's launching in August through Macroverse Media, which is a digital comic book company that publishes independent comic books and graphic novels. And I'm working alongside another member of the BFCC. She's one of our talented artists by the name of Jackie Smith. Shout out to Jackie, working really hard. The first 2 issues are almost ready, and I'm going to be sending them out to a lot of people who have graciously offered to promote our work. And then from there, once it launches in August, we're just going to work our tails off getting the word out, trying to get people to read it, and trying to, I guess, spread the word as much as humanly possible. So I'm going to ask you two to do that too.
Of course.
So, yeah. So between promoting, sitting back and waiting for Susan Kim to be ready, and then promoting it, and then working on, I think I'm working on like 5 romance novels right now. And then trying to get the BFCC up and running. And then Natasha, you and I, we keep scheduling time to work on what we call our Black Game of Thrones.
And we keep not doing it's got staff. It's literally I got staff. I mean, I'm really excited that I got staff, but it's definitely been a time crunch to say the least.
No, I'm happy for you too. I'm definitely happy for you because, like I said, I've known you for almost 10 years, and this has been like a huge journey for you. So I'm incredibly happy for you. But between that and I work full time and I got 2 kids, so we're always like, oh, we need to work on this. We need to work on this, and then like the day comes and either we forget or like a few minutes before we're supposed to meet, one of us texts the other and then goes, can we do this next Saturday? Because this happened.
But it'll happen. And it'll happen. And it's a really cool concept because one of the things, I worked for HBO for a long time, 6 years, I think, as part of the original series team. And I loved Game of Thrones. But the issue is, as you know, many of the people of color were slaves and or did not have prominent roles. So we're really excited to take a world that's equally as big and equally as epic and infuse it with Black culture, infuse it with Black people, because I think there's been a hit and miss relationship with a lot of fantasy and Black people because usually we're just not in it. So we're excited to like really dig in and bring that home. So that's going to be a fun project. It'll probably take a few years to like really see fruition, but we're really excited to be working on it together.
That sounds amazing. I didn't even know you guys were working on that one.
Yeah, so like I decided that I can't, like between my TV and everything else I'm doing, I definitely need a writing partner when it comes to like my comic book stuff. So it's been a really good partnership, and Mo brought the idea to me and I just really loved it. So we've been working on that as much as we can.
And I decided that Natasha has a much stronger voice when it comes to stuff like that sci-fi and fantasy. Mm-hmm. I have stronger comic book knowledge, and she has stronger like sci-fi fantasy knowledge. So
like the world building, or
I'm a world building nut. And I find that once someone gives me an idea, this is the reason why I love writing spec scripts. People are like, oh God, spec scripts, spec TV scripts. No, but the reason why I like writing them is I find that once you tell me what the parameters are, I can be a lot more creative. And so I find that I love world building. And I also love taking characters and figuring out like how to connect them, but also how to give the information to the audience in an interesting way. So that's the things that we've been working on together, and it's been a lot of fun.
They're quick with it too. Like I basically gave her like excuse the language, but I basically gave her a word vomit, which was pretty much just okay. I came up with characters. I came up with a I kind of have a name of the country. I kind of have a name for this. I kind of have a name for that, for these characters, for what the world is, and for all this other stuff. And it was, I don't even know how many pages it was that I gave you, Natasha, but it was just basically, I just wrote a bunch of stuff and I said, here, read this and tell me what you think. And she said, oh, I like this. How about we do this? And how about this? And how about this? And how about this? And she just came up with stuff like on the fly. And I'm like, yeah, I like that. That works.
Years of writing these facts. That's what that years of playing in other people.
I mean, it sounds kind of strange because we don't really have anything like solidified, but
we actually have the beginning.
Yeah. So we one of the aspects of the story is that a king of this African kingdom is exiled, and he goes to the fantasy version of Japan. And we were talking about, okay, let's look at his story. So we're going to look at his daughter, who's the main protagonist, his wife, and it's basically going to be like each issue, almost like how in Game of Thrones, each character gets a chapter. So it's almost like each issue is dedicated to a specific character.
Ooh,
kind of comes together as one whole story. So that's how we're looking at it. It's still in its infancy, but we're very, very excited about it. So it's a lot. I mean, one of the things that I realized recently is that I save. Are we allowed to curse on here?
I don't know.
Okay, casually I do without realizing it, so I just wanted to ask just to get that out of the way. But a lot of my deep stuff I kind of save for my sci-fi, fantasy, crime, supernatural stuff. And a lot of the lighthearted, fun stuff I save for my romance. So I've noticed a lot on Twitter, people will talk about I'm tired of hearing about Black pain. Let's talk about Black joy. Let's talk about Black love. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. So obviously I can't negate, I can't take away from the Black experience. Racism is part of the Black experience, unfortunately. But I try not to overwhelm the story with all of that. Whenever I'm writing a romance novel, I save that for the other stuff. And I think like adding that to like sci-fi and supernatural and fantasy and stuff actually makes it much more interesting and much more complex. So
well, you can talk about it in ways of nuance that you can't, like, when it's a straight thing, you just have to, the thing is the thing. And you can find ways and layers to deal with it when it's not like, when you're not infusing it with sci-fi or supernatural, but it's a lot harder to do versus, the point of sci-fi and supernatural for a long time has been to talk about things that are uncomfortable and put them in a different skin. X-Men seriously, X-Men is just about immigration, right? So like it's literally it's sort of right. So like, but you just basically, if you want to talk about immigration, but you already know that no one really wants to talk about it, or it's uncomfortable, or people feel weird about it, then you end up talking about aliens who are trying to integrate into America. And then it's still an immigration story, but you're not hitting it so on the head that it's right. Something that people want to pull back from. So that's one of the reasons why I think genre is so helpful in dealing with these harder topics. And that's one of the reasons why I love writing it, honestly.
Exactly. And with romance, it's kind of tricky to infuse all that stuff in there because you're trying to write something that's a lighthearted beach read, basically. So when you have something that's serious and deep in there, it's almost like you have to tread lightly because you also want it to still have the whole happily ever after at the end of it. So you don't want to like overwhelm the reader with too much of a serious topic, but at the same time you do want to touch on it too, because if your protagonists are Black Americans, you can't not say something. So it's kind of a balance that I'm finding myself dealing with, but I think I'm handling it fairly well. I joined I guess it's a writers group called Smut University.
Wow.
And they're basically a bunch of ladies that are a bunch of romance writers. And our next meeting, it's divided up into different days. So there's Tuesdays that some of the writers meet, Wednesdays, and I'm the Sunday group. and I get to read a chapter from something that I'm working on right now. And I basically gave like a brief little synopsis for it, and everybody was super excited. So I'm kind of excited, but I'm also a little bit nervous too, because
It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fantastic.
one of the things that I'm also a little nervous about is I'm the only Black person in the thing.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Okay.
one of those things where it's like, okay, I wrote something that I know is relatable, but at the same time, there's stuff in there that I might have to explain, and that's
It's
Never
always
fun.
a little uncomfortable because you don't know, like when someone's reading your thing, you don't know what they bring to it and how they're going to understand it, and so that's always a catch-22. So like I understand the nerves around that.
yeah.
Makes total sense.
Well, the ladies are totally supportive. They're really, really awesome. So I'm not like nervous, but there's still that little apprehension that comes whenever you're the only Black person in the room.
Definitely.
Did
So
you want to talk about
yeah.
BFC?
Oh, I'm about to. Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
So okay. So thank you, ladies. So we're gonna move into talking about the BFCC and then briefly about our projects with the BFCC, and then we'll go into the final topic. So go right ahead. Who wants to talk about it?
Mel, do you want to go or do you want me? I've been explaining it for a while, so you just want me to.
Yeah, go ahead, Monique.
The BFCC, as Allison mentioned, it stands for Black Female Comics Collab. Basically, this is really Natasha's idea, though. She
I can take over whenever you want me to.
okay. No, it's okay. But it's just funny that I got credit for it being a brainchild. I'm like, I really didn't do anything, but okay.
I totally thought it was both of you.
No, it was both of us because she is one of the things where I came up with the idea and then she kind of swoops in with the resources of how to get it started.
So see, she did what you do with her.
Yeah, exactly.
Vomit thing.
I mean, if you want, I'll start with how it started. So
Okay.
just and then we can go in. But basically, what happened was I noticed you, Allison, and you, Mo, like all of us were writing comic books, and I was like, how are we going to fund these things? And then I was like, well, obviously, we're all going to do some kind of Kickstarter or something, but like, why are we all doing them separately? I feel like we have a better chance if we just work together. And maybe did one campaign and that could fund all of her projects. So then I said, you know, guys, would you be interested in working together as a group on our individual projects and or maybe come up with new topics? And you guys all graciously were like, yay! So then I basically
exact response.
but basically, so then after that, what happened is we formed the Black Females Comics Collab, which is a group that now is comprised of, I think, 5 or 6 writers, and I don't even know how many artists. But they're all women, they're all Black, and we've all come together to bring these 5 stories to life. And what these stories are they're part of an anthology series around the theme of what does a superhero mean to us. And we all came up with these different stories around that theme. And individual issues of like issue 1 of each comic, somewhere between 24 to 28 pages last time I checked. And we're gonna basically write. We have already finished writing those, and then we're at the process where we have to start getting the character designs, getting the illustrations, getting the cover art, so that we can create the Kickstarter campaign or whatever crowdsource funding we end up using. And then from there, we'll use that money to continue to pay the artists to finish the full book. And so that's kind of where we are with it. But what we really wanted out of this, and when it became something serious, is we wanted to create a space where I feel like a lot of times when we were growing up, we were all nerds. Let's just face it. We all loved, our, whether it be Pokemon or like anime or whatever it was we were watching. We were all watching these things where a lot of times the voices of Black people and definitely voices of Black women weren't really included in the content. And even when you go out now, you realize that the people who control the stories are not people that look like us. So we really wanted to create a space where Black women could tell their stories the way they wanted to tell them and feel safe. And not feeling like they have to change certain things because it made other people feel uncomfortable. So that's really what we try to do, is just, it's about sisterhood and really supporting each other. So that's what BFCC is. And then we each have a project. I'll let Moles talk about our individual project actually.
Okay. Well, this is another idea that I brought to Natasha years ago. Um, I think I pitched her two things, and she said I like that one better. So basically, the idea is called the Crusader in the Underground. Our main character, Audrey Porter, is a guidance counselor at school by day, and she's a superhero at night. And it just so happens that she's not the only superpowered being in this universe, but she's the only one who's outwardly um, looking out for the community. The underground consists of other superpowered beings who also look out for the community, but they do it in a more discreet way because, unfortunately, they um, lost some of their members in a horrible accident. So that caused them to go into hiding. They end up teaming up with Audrey, and they end up coming out of hiding and working together as a group. So I basically, when I pitched it to Natasha, I said, I guess X-Men and Justice League, kind of, except let's say Professor Xavier or Superman, kind of like the de facto leader of Justice League, is a black woman. And she was like, okay, that sounds awesome. So Audrey's powers, I guess the best way that I can kind of describe them is they're kind of similar to Captain Marvel's powers. Now, a lot of people have had the title of Captain Marvel, and I'm referring to the current one, Carol Danvers. So her powers are kind of similar to that. You know, heat rays coming out of her hands, superhuman strength, ability flight. I'm trying to think of what else. She ages very, very slowly.
Mm-hmm.
And she can also heal people. Like if they get hurt, or I think if they die, she can also resurrect them as well. So those are some of her superpowers. She's like the most superpowered one out of the entire group. So that's why she basically becomes the de facto leader of the group later on. But basically, it's kind of an origin story of how she comes to be a superhero and how she comes to join this group. And it all starts with this horrible corporation that's basically trying to take housing away from Black and brown people. And one of the people that are affected by that are one of her students' grandparents. And so that's how she gets herself involved. And I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil it. But it's a really fun read. It's a really interesting read. And we have, our group is multicultural. We have Audrey, who's Black. We have Connie, who's Jewish. We have Izzy, who is Mexican-American. We have Masato, who's Japanese. And we have Rahul, who is Indian and British. So everybody's kind of like our answer to this person. So I guess Audrey's kind of our answer to Superman. Connie is basically our answer to, I don't know, maybe Jean Grey, because basically her power is that she can watch somebody do something for a matter of seconds, and then she becomes an expert at it just like that, whether it's a foreign language, a form of fighting. So Connie knows Kung Fu, Connie knows various different languages, Connie knows a lot of stuff just from watching people do it for a few seconds, and then she is able to absorb that ability. So I guess she's kind of like Rogue in a way, except she doesn't really leave people weakened. She doesn't have to touch them in order to get it. Rahul is basically the human time machine. He's like the Flash. He moves super fast, and the faster he moves, like time goes backwards or it can go forward. Izzy can teleport people from one location to another location, and she could also transport people from one dimension to another dimension. And Masato, I feel like he has the weakest power because his is just like force fields.
Very important.
Exactly.
We have to give him something else because everybody else has like, oh, they're able to do this and this. His is just.
We'll work on Masato, but I think honestly,
really strong.
Really important.
So that's his super ability. But of course, Audrey has like the strongest ability out of everybody. And her origin story is actually really, really interesting because she doesn't discover that she has superpowers until she's 16. Audrey is really like in her 70s, but she looks like she's in her 20s. And she discovers her ability because she grew up in a fictitious city called Magnolia, Mississippi. and she ends up getting into a bit of trouble with some of the
Don't go too far into it. You're giving it away.
Okay, so she gets into a bit of trouble with some of the white folks in Magnolia, and that's how she discovers her powers. I'm gonna shut up.
Okay, I'll tell you about my project. So I love that project, by the way, ladies. I'm super like obsessed with it. So everybody, like, if you read their story, you're going to be obsessed with them as writers, as well as their world building and everything. So my story is called Unwitched, and originally Natasha came up with the idea. I didn't know it was so new when she approached me. I just thought it had been, in my mind, I thought it had been going on for like a year or months or something. I don't know. But I was working on the Raven Code, which was called Poe at the time, and I changed it for reasons because whatever. But I had to change it. And I was already kind of doing it with Subsume. But I also had this idea that I've kind of been wanting to do for a really long time. I don't think I've even told the ladies about this, but I just had this idea about doing an Oz themed comic, and it was kind of like they're doing this collab, and I can do this now. I want to do this with them, other Black women. So basically, you'll see a lot of times when I write, I'm bringing a lot of familiar stories from things that we grew up maybe reading or even in school or on television or whatever, and kind of bringing unexpected characters to the forefront within those stories. So with the Raven Code, we have Poe Lockwood, who is a descendant of Edgar Allan Poe, but she's a Black woman and she's reversing this curse in the small town. And then with the Unwitched, it is about the Wicked Witch of the East great granddaughter, and she's a Black woman, and so is the Wicked Witch of the East in my story. And instead of the Wicked Witch of the East house dropped on her, the house was dropped on her, but she was exiled to Earth. And so in this story, we've got the great granddaughter in contemporary times, and she has to go back to Oz to restore magic. But she's not restoring magic to Oz; she's restoring magic to the exiled community that has basically been living on Earth for several generations, and they've created their own underground sort of thing. So I tend to love writing about secret societies and things like that. But in this is just a group of people that have been in exile. They are magic people, and they've hidden and they've sort of felt very disconnected from the world and afraid of being ostracized, and kind of like the ladies were talking about, using genre to sort of talk about the real issues that we face in society today and make it a little bit more accessible. I think that kind of draws me to genre for that reason. So these people are just feeling, very they're very connected to their magic, but they're also ashamed of themselves or afraid and just things like that. But my lead is not. And so she very much wants to preserve magic, preserve her heritage. And she's very bold in that sense. But in the story, what happens is the older generation starts to lose their magic and they start to die. And she wants to preserve that magic and obviously save her great grandmother and save everybody. So she has to return to Oz, and she ends up meeting Dorothy Gale's great grandson, and she has to bring him along in order to access Oz because they're exiled people. So she gets him, they go back to Oz, and then that's basically the story. So that's just the first part of it, and I hope that I'm going to be able to continue the world, expand upon it. A lot of ideas have been falling into my mind, so we'll see what happens there, but that's basically it. It's called Unwitched.
Cool. And then within, sorry?
I'm sorry, I think I remember telling Allison that I want something really bad to happen to Glenda because I didn't.
I do. That's why we're friends. Anyway.
She stole the shoes. This is awful.
But Unwitched is a really cool concept, and I think that's something that we both love doing. We love looking at literature that we grew up on and then just kind of playing with it in new and unexpected ways. So I really love that project. And the second you told me about it, I was in love with it because I was like, yes, please, I need this in my life. So I'm really excited about it.
Thank you.
And then my individual, so I'm writing one with Mo, and then my individual project is called Guardians of the Dam, which actually was originally a TV pilot that was based off a lot of my anime watching. And then I realized quickly that it probably shouldn't be live action, because no matter how I tried to write it, it was just too much. And so then I ended up being like, well, what would it be as a comic book? And I think it's working out a lot better. But what it is, very quickly, is I'm obsessed with empaths. I'm a bit of an empath myself. And so I wanted to take that and obviously make it a little bit more supernatural, and infuse that. So I have a main character, Alexia Rex, who is an empath, but in my world, an empath means is you have the ability to see the demons that are hunting people, that are influencing people. And so in order to help those people before it's too late, she has to connect to that person and see if she can pull them back. And as the more that she can connect to them, the more that demon loses power over them. And then she can hopefully save that person and that soul. And so that's pretty much what she does. She is someone who has a huge heart. She cares about kids. She cares about people and their problems. But the problem is she focuses so much on other people that she doesn't focus on herself. And so there's a lot of unhealed pain that she has to deal with. And she also puts off living her life, whether it be romance or connecting to people, having people connect to her in a real way as a person. She struggles with that because she can sense their pain. She can also sense their anxiety. So it's hard for her to really connect to people. So that's something that that's like her character journey. And so what it is Guardians of the Damned it takes a empath, a soldier. A soldier is someone who is human, who is usually in some kind of law enforcement. So in my comic, that would be John, and he is a cop. Actually, he's a detective. And then there's the Reaper, and that is someone who has taken on the form of someone who has already died. So he's living in that person's body. He's eternal. So whatever age that person died at. So my Reaper is 35. He'll be 35 forever. And he is the one that once Alexia has separated the demon, he can reap them. So you take the three of them together, and they are called Guardians of the Damned because those damned souls or those demons are called the damned. So that's pretty much the concept. In the first issue, what we have is we realize that they try to help someone, they make a huge mistake. Unfortunately, someone dies because of it. And then it's a year later and they have to come back together. She's terrified of making another mistake. So she doesn't want to get involved. But when her own children, because she runs a halfway house, when some of her own children start to come under the influence of the dam, she realizes that she has no choice and that she has to try again. And that is pretty much like the shape of the first issue.
I'm so excited about that one too. It's funny that we actually met because we were both at a breakfast for women writing in, I think it was television in particular, right?
Yes.
And we were outside at the end and we started talking about how we both had empath projects. And I was like, oh my God, how does she have an empath project like I do? And mine was like my novel that I was trying to turn into a screenplay. And it's like, no, but that was just like our starting off point. And then it became the comic that she's doing with this collective. And I just love the story. It's so good. It's just so exciting. So, hey, okay, let's do the topic about writing across different mediums. And just to kind of compare and contrast, since our common thing is the comics, I guess we can compare like writing in another medium to that, maybe to start off. So what would you say the biggest difference is in writing comics compared to one of your primary mediums? Who wants to go? Natasha?
Yeah, sure. So my primary medium is TV. And I would say the biggest difference is they're both visual mediums, but comic books are even more so. And while you're in TV, you're writing in she walks into the room. So everything is present tense. Everything is happening as you're writing it. In comic books, every image is a static image. So you have to, instead of she walks into the room, an artist can draw walking, obviously, but what is the full image? So it's like, yeah, she's walking into the room, this person's in the room, and he's looking at her. What are they saying? So you have to be, you're crafting essentially a very specific moment, panel by panel. And you have to be very cognizant of what is in that panel, because because whatever is there needs to tell the story fully so that you can move on to the next panel and get that information. So it's really interesting when you're writing it, because it's like it's a different kind of fluidity, if that makes sense. And so that was one of the first things that I had to get used to, because I remember when I was started writing comics, I was writing them exactly like I wrote TV. And people were like, yeah, so here's the thing, there's like 5 panels in this one panel, because like, she's like, you know, she's walking, then she's turning, then she's doing this, and she's doing that. And then I'm like, yeah, that's all like 5 panels. Like, you need to like just like write what is actually happening in this one panel. So that was really weird for me to get used to. But I've actually found that I really enjoy it, because I think it forces you to figure out how to tell a story, and writing comic books has helped my TV writing, because it's like you have to be very specific. And we all know specificity is queen or king when it comes to writing, because it's what makes sure that the story is told in a clear fashion. So they complement each other, but that was definitely one of the biggest differences when I started.
Excellent. I totally agree. Monique, do you want to go?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about like when I was working on Susan Keem, and as I was basically everything that Natasha just said was totally 100% right. When I finally had a collaborator after a false start, and then when Jackie and I were breaking everything down, which took us months. Once we had to go like panel by panel, page by page, issue by issue, and the interesting thing is you have to take everything aside from whatever it is that you pictured in your head, and you have to tell yourself it's not necessarily going to look like that, because you're working collaboratively with another person who may have their own ideas. So you definitely have to be open to that too. And that's why I'm grateful that I have my background in theater, because collaboration is key when you're directing a play, because it's not just telling a bunch of actors what to do, because the actors are going to have ideas as well. And you definitely have to be open to that, especially considering that their idea might actually end up being better than yours. So that's definitely something that you have to be really cognizant of. Like when I'm writing my novels, it's just me. And when I'm done, I can have somebody read it and then give me notes and then tell me, okay, well, I think that you should probably, this is a bit too wordy, or this is a bit too this, or this is a bit too that. And then I go back and then I fix it, and I'm still doing it on my own. But I have somebody giving me feedback and telling me what they think, but it's still, the onus is still on me. Whereas with comics, it is super, 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 super collaborative. Like, I remember when Jackie and I were on the phone talking about character design, and I told her, okay, I'm thinking this character kind of looks like Giancarlo Esposito circa Breaking Bad. This character kind of looks like this person. This character, I'm thinking this person. And, I was just kind of like, I didn't have like a Pinterest board, but I kind of just like shared my screen with her on Zoom, and I just Googled good-looking black guys, and I told her, this guy right here, this is who Akeem is. Of course, don't make him look exactly like that guy, because then we'll owe that guy money for likeness rights. So we're like going over like what each character should look like, and then we finally get to like the matriarchal character, who was a foster mother to Akeem and his foster brother Trevor, and she said, well, what do you want her to look like? And I said, you know what? You go ahead and come up with what you think she should look like. And she was like, are you sure? And I said, yeah, I trust you. Because I had a vague idea of what I wanted Mama Jean to look like, but I didn't have like a complete concept. So I went ahead, and you definitely have to make sure that you trust the person that you're working with, and that you trust the artist that you're working with. And I 100% trust Jackie. She's amazing and incredibly talented. You guys have seen her work, so you know how talented she is. And so I just told her, you know what? I'm gonna leave that up to you. Just every time we see her, She's wearing a different wig. That's the only thing that it's kind of like Regine on Living Single. She has a wig for every occasion. Other than that, how she looks, her height, everything else, I'm gonna leave that up to you. And she said, okay, cool. So yeah, that's probably one of the biggest things is with comics is definitely a much more collaborative effort. Whereas when you're writing a regular novel, it's kind of just you by yourself. Like I said, you can get feedback, you can get notes from people, whether that you hire an editor or a proofreader or something like that, and they can, give you notes on anything like grammar or whether something is a bit too wordy or what have you, and then you can go back and fix it. But for the most part, it's just you. But with a comic book, it's you and this other person. And if you have an idea for something and they have an idea for something that kind of conflicts with it, you have to sit down and figure out what idea best serves the book, because that's what's important. Not whose idea is better or whose idea is work or I'm trying to figure out a way to phrase this. Not necessarily whose idea is better in terms of, an ego thing, but whose idea is better in terms of what serves the book better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. It reminds me a lot of the film process. It really does, the way you're presenting it. I feel like it's like, for me, it's like I feel more freedom with the comics, and I feel closer, not necessarily closer to the team, as if people in a film are very away from me. But in general, because I'm not like this huge writer and I'm not a writer producer yet, and I'm not, the director, I feel like I have like absolutely no control, although they do listen to me, and these are just these particular partners. They do ask for my opinion. Like, for example, with the movie that's shooting now, they asked me who I wanted as the lead, and they went after her. She didn't end up being the lead. They did go after her. She was having a baby, but they tried. And so, but I didn't really, it wasn't really like I could say, okay, well, we must have this lead, or, whatever. It was like, you wrote it, thanks. And that's kind of it. Whereas, with maybe this next one, I have like a little bit more say and whatever. But with the comics, my writing team, my art team, and I are just very, very close. And I feel like I've had the opportunity to take the time to write. It's very similar to a film where I spending the time working on the script first, and then it goes into the production phase. But it's just me and my art team, and we're very close to each other, and just the whole thing, like you said, Monique, I'm picking oh, this is what I want the person to look like, and this is what I want the person to look like. And they actually, this particular team, really try to adhere to that, but they also have their own eye, and basically the way it comes out looking is really from that artist. It's that artist's style, and I really love that part of it. And I think that it just feels like my thing, but their thing too. It's a different kind of a process. Whereas a film, I think, yes, it does definitely feel like my thing, but it's huge team, I don't know everybody. I'm not going to know even the production designer. I'm not going to know their staff. I'm not going to know the makeup designer. I'm not going to know, I don't even get to talk to the actors very much. So maybe when I get to invited on set, I'll get to do that. But it's still just a totally different kind of, got to really just let that go. You got to let your baby go in film. And I feel like with the comics, I have a little bit, it's more control over it. I'm more of the boss at this stage of my career, at least. Let's see.
There's actually one more thing. Another thing that I was thinking about though too is and I think this is true for screenwriting too and TV writing, but comic books allow you to get into the character's thoughts. You can do thought bubbles. You can do consciousness. You can do VO is not a problem. Even it shouldn't be a problem no matter what you do, because rules are meant to be broken. But whatever, we won't go into writing rules. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is there is a lot more rules in place around TV writing and screenwriting about what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, what should be on the page, what shouldn't be on the page. And I feel like one of the things that I really love about when I turn on to write a comic book is that I was like, oh, I can just put thought bubble here? What? I could just say what she's thinking? What? And then like, yeah, and you're like, yeah, you can. And I'm like, wait, okay. And so that allowed also for you as a writer to just feel like, like you just kind of shake it all off and you're like, okay, I can just do what I want. Like, to do exactly what I want, and I don't have to bring in like a side character that she has to talk to, that she can talk about the specific thing because I need the audience to know about it, blah 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 blah. It was just
worrying about being like on the nose, like oh no, it's not on the nose.
And then you're creating this character, so now you have to make them 3-dimensional because they can't just be there just to get information out. You know, like there's all this stuff. Whereas in a comic book, it's like, oh, I can put thoughts. I can put random sounds. I can design the page. I can look at the page and think about how to like design this page exactly the way I want it, so that it gets to this or that or this and you know. And so there's a lot more freedom in terms of the writing itself because you don't feel so bogged down by like the do's and don'ts of TV writing or screenwriting in general. Script writing.
Even formatting, like for screenwriting, formatting is this. You don't deviate from it. It's this. And comic book writing, there are like so many different ways people like. I've seen the way Neil Gaiman writes, as opposed to the way Grant Morrison writes, as opposed to the way the late Dwayne McDuffie wrote, and even the formatting is similar, but you know it still has like little differences. And you're like, oh, okay, wow. So he just put panel 1, blah 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 blah. And then just went straight to the dialogue, and then just went straight to this, and then just went straight to that. And it's interesting because you can kind of play around with it. And as long as it makes sense, as long as it makes sense, as long as it's clear to the artist what they're reading, then, you know, it's all good. So that's something that I thought was when I saw that, I was like, oh,
yeah, I love that. I feel like I created my own style based on like what was easier for me to write as long as I had just a few things inside, you know, to make it clear. But like with screenwriting, I feel like it's like you're training yourself for many, many, many years just to learn how to like not do things wrong. So, you know.
And then the thing is, once you learn it, then you have to unlearn it because usually it's one or two, if not all of the rules that you learn that is stopping you from really writing in your best voice. So then it's like you learn it all to know it, and then you have to like, hopefully it stays in your subconscious and write as though you don't know it. Because if you start thinking about all of these things, you're literally writing like in this, it feels like you're suffocating while you're writing because you're like, well, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do this.
Like the voiceover thing.
Yeah, exactly. I can't do voice, I can't do that. And so you're just literally like, I am paralyzed. I'm terrified that this word "the" is in the wrong way for whatever reason. Even though it's just the word "the." So so it's like you have to get to the place where you know it so well that you can then be like, if I want VO here, it may not last. I may be taking this VO out on the 4th draft, but I'm putting VO in here right now and I don't care. And you have to get to that place where you're very comfortable with being like, I know the rules and I don't care right now. Because then it frees you up to actually be creative and have fun with the writing. But that's a whole journey that's a separate panel.
It's a whole journey. It's even I do even those cheats where you're not supposed to write what's in the head.
Yeah,
I put those little cheats and I put it in there, and you know, look,
sometimes,
but you know, it's not supposed to be there, but sometimes it actually does work. So, but you have to learn. Basically, you shouldn't start out doing that because then you're just going to be writing it just all wrong. But eventually, you know your style and you know what you're trying to convey on the screen, and you know, like the actor can use this or not, you know, or the director can use this or not, but you're basically bringing out that scene. And so you're kind of you're not really breaking the rule, you're enhancing your script. So it just becomes something different.
Exactly. And then it's also like you have to realize too that there will always be someone who's like the rule Nazi who will read your script and just be like, I already don't like it because there's VO. And then I'm looking at that person like, Shawshank Redemption is one of the greatest films of all time. And that whole thing is VO.
Exactly. It's just like, whatever.
So you just have to be like, okay, well, and you know, it's like, you know who you are. You have to get to a place where you know who you are, you know your style, you're confident in your writing, and whoever doesn't like it, too bad. Like then this is just not for you. But it's hard to get to that place. So yeah. But I feel like with comic books, it just has much more freedom naturally.
And I think that I agree. And I think that that whole getting to the place where this is not just for you is a huge thing just in general as a writer to get to. Because I know when I first, it's one of the reasons I don't write books right now is like when I had one of my first novels out and I just had, some great reviews, but some terrible. And I was just crushed. But then I've gotten to this place where it's just like this story is not for you, so that's okay. Or the script is not for you, and that's okay. And
Fine.
obviously, like I'm not perfect all the time. Like if some huge writer that I admire says my thing is crap, I'm gonna be like, oh my god. But like in general, it's okay for even in that situation for something that I'm writing not to be for that person. It doesn't mean I'm not taking notes and not,
Exactly.
elevating my work. That's not what I mean. But it just means in general, not every story, not every show, not every film
It's
is
for
going to
everyone.
be everyone.
And then on top of that too, like as something that I find, and this is just across writing, I don't care what medium, writers put too much damn pressure on themselves. Like they having heart attacks and stuff because they feel paralyzed by whether or not they're going to be judged harshly. What is this person going to think? What is that person going to think? What if I have no talent? Like there's all this, like there's just this constant noise in your head of like, just stop doing it because it's too hard. It's essentially what the noise is. It says. And I feel like you also have to get to that place where you're like, you know what? You're right. Maybe this particular story on this particular day, even though I'm telling you it's done, could use more work. But I'm okay with that. I have to move on. Like I have other projects to do, and I am not defined by how well this one thing has been written because I can't sit here and obsess over it. And I think that's also like something, and that's across mediums. It's like you have to get to a place where you're just like, look, I did the best I could in these 10 days or whatever days that you gave me to write this. Is it the best thing on the planet? Probably not. But it's the best you're going to get from me in this amount of time. So you take it, and that's that. And then if you can come back to it, you will. And if you can't, oh well, the next project will be better because you're not defined by one thing. And I think that's also, it's a long journey to get to that place because you're just so consumed by like, are people going to just hate my writing? And can I even write to begin with? And so you have to kind of get that noise cycle out of your head too, which is hard to do.
It's hard.
Definitely agree.
I pretty much just I'm gonna butcher the quote. I'm so sorry to the late Toni Morrison, but it's the quote that I think one of those quotes that she's most famous for is, if there's a book out there and that you really want to read and it hasn't been written, that means that you have to write it. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much what I do. I just write stuff that I would want to read and hope that other people want to read it too. So
exactly.
Yay. Exactly. Well, on that note, it looks like it's noon. Oh no. Well,
he's gonna come back with us, so I think we have a little bit more time.
Okay, so I guess what would you guys say is the benefit of writing across mediums for you?
That's a good question. I think the benefit is as a writer, I feel like the more you write in different mediums, it gives your brain a break while still letting it exercise. And in other words, sometimes you can write like 10,000 TV scripts for me. And then it gets to a point where like, if I see one more TV script, I can't even read one right now. I want to vomit. Like I'm done. Like I'm done. But then you turn around and you write a comic book. It's a different way of writing. And like I said, because it's freeing, it releases you from a lot of the rules. So now your brain's like, okay, well, I'm still writing and I'm still creating, but this is different and it feels fresher and newer. So then you can go off and do that for a while. And then let's say you turn over to novels, then you can have the pretty prose that go on for whatever length of time because that you couldn't do in TV scripts. And that's okay too.
Okay.
Yeah,
I love that.
Oh, sorry, I was reading the message you sent us. I think just writing in different mediums is Basically, Natasha, what you just said was just perfect. There's nothing I can even add. It's the same thing with writing in different genres too. Like, I feel like writing a love story right now. You know what? No, I don't. I feel like writing something where something gets blown up.
Yeah, I feel like it's really gruesome murder. Where's my serial killer drama? Like,
giving your brain a reset. So I don't feel like writing something flowery and romantic and gushy right now, even though that's something that I absolutely love. Right now, I feel like writing about aliens or succubus
yeah, I just think, and then also I think, thank you, and then also I just think about writing across mediums. Also, is I think you just become a better writer because you learn different techniques with each one. Like there's certain things that you have to do in a prose that you have to do in a comic book that you have to do. So like you're becoming a stronger storyteller is what's happening because you're learning different tricks of the trade, and you'll like, I know that there was a moment where I realized that something I did in a comic book actually could also be done in my TV script.
Exactly.
And I was like, oh, that's cool. Like it would be a cool device because you have like those devices where the characters talking to the audience, or there's something cool or different, or there's a visual that comes up on the screen while you're watching. Like in Her, for example, I think there was a lot of visuals. So like you can come up with these different things of way of getting the story across that you were like, well, actually that can work over here too. And so if you hadn't done, if you hadn't been working in a comic book at 4 a.m. in the morning, and then you wouldn't realize that visual actually could be applied to your current movie or whatever it is. So I think it just helps you like see story differently, and then you can just kind of cross-pollinate.
I totally agree. Kind of know what I was going to say.
If somebody were to say, oh, I need somebody who knows how to write sci-fi, oh, Tasha can do that. I know somebody who can write romance, Tasha can do that. Comic books, Tasha can do that. Screenplays, Tasha can do that too. So it's like if somebody's just saying, I need somebody who can do X, Y, and Z, because I know for like most part, people tend to just get pigeonholed into one thing. It's like, but nobody has just one interest. We have interest in all kinds of stuff. So the idea that you can only be pigeonholed as a romance writer or a sci-fi writer or a horror writer or this or that, and it doesn't feel fair. And the idea that you can only do that one thing, it's like, but I don't want to do that one thing. I want to do all kinds of things. I have a voice that I can spread out for all kinds of genres and all kinds of mediums. So that's probably the reason why I am kind of a proponent with staying independent, because the minute you start, because the minute you enter into not being independent and working with other
teams, other
teams and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to be careful.
Yeah, I know.
I'm trying to be careful how I phrase it, but then that's when it starts to become, notes, tons and tons of notes. Oh, well, maybe we should like tone down this and add a little bit more this and blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, when you're just doing it like on your own independently, you don't really have to worry so much about that. And you may not have the backing and the money and the budget, but you still have, as long as you have like a following of people who enjoy your work and who are continuing to like buy your work, then that's cool too.
Yeah.
Sorry,
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, the whole idea about being pigeonholed, I feel like for me, I like a few genres as I named earlier, but I noticed that a lot of times when people learn that I write, like I typically am like Natasha, where I have romance almost in everything that I do, no matter the genre. But other than that, like I feel like they see, oh, you did this thriller over here, and then okay, you wrote sci-fi over here, and this is a period drama. Oh, so you write everything. And I'm like, no, I don't write everything. I have a few things that I like. I feel like people can't, it seems like they can't understand that you can write a few things. It's either you write one thing or you wite everything. And so for me, it's just It's kind of like, no, and you have no direction. And it's like, I do have direction and you have interest, but it's not like, I'm not like, okay, I'm not writing like slapstick comedies. I don't write that. I just don't. I don't write sitcoms, and people are like, oh, write my sitcom. You write everything, right? And I can maybe if I make myself, but I'm not a joke teller. So that's not my thing.
And
so I don't know.
And just really quickly, so just like three things. So in response to what you just said, first things first, what we write is we typically write characters that are the same thing, that they're dealing with the same issues over and over again because they're issues that we're dealing with in our own life. So whether or not you end up doing a thriller or a slasher or this or that, if you look at the characters or the themes that you're exploring, they typically seem to be living around the same house. And I think really what writers do is our connecting thread isn't necessarily always genre or the thriller, this or that. It's really just, what are these characters going through? What are the themes that we're hinting at? What are the questions that we're trying to answer? And then usually if you look at that, you can find, oh, so this writer's voice is X because they're always talking about X, whether it's thriller or a slasher or a romance or whatever the heck it is. And then really quickly too, I think about writing across all genres. What's really important too is not every story that you have can fit into one thing. So like, for example, I had that one concept that I tried to make into a TV series, but it's way better as a comic book. But I wouldn't have known that had I was like, okay, well, let's try a comic book, right? So I think also knowing how to write multiple things just opens you up so that whatever stories come out through you, you can figure out what best medium it is to tell them.
It works in. Exactly. That
exactly.
Is like,
instead of squeezing into like this one thing that it isn't working for. And then last thing is what I forgot to mention is BFCC is actually also in partner with Hex Comics. And so anyone that wants to go check out Hex Comics, please do. They're basically our parent, I guess, creative parent. And they will be the ones that will be promoting our comic book anthology series, going out to the industry and saying these writers are really cool, these artists are really cool, please check them out. So if you want to like get a head start to figure out or just take a look at our parent company, that's Hex Comics. They have a great website. So that was it.
Shout out to Kelly Sue.
Yay. And then one last thing I want to say about writing across mediums, if you do want to get into the mainstream and that type of thing, having that IP like in comics and novels, that is huge. They are buying a ton of it. We have all these streamers, as you guys all well know, and that is what they are up to right now. So a lot of times, my rep will be like, okay, well, can you do a take on all their IP library and do a one sheet and send it in, and maybe we can get that made into a film. So but they're looking for smaller stuff, smaller stories and comics and unknown things. You don't have to necessarily be a super, super popular. So it's just a good idea to be able to own your stuff and write your stuff in that other medium rather than having somebody hire it out or you're adapting their material. You can do that too. You can also learn how to do that as well because you're writing across different mediums. So that's basically it. So thank you, ladies, for coming. I think we went over 10 minutes, but it was so worth it. And I love hanging out with you guys and talking to you. We're going to probably be talking a little bit later today.
We will definitely be talking a little bit later today, BFCC.
Okay, well, I guess this is goodbye. And thank you guys so much. Happy Juneteenth. And thank you, and Dedra.
Hey, thank you guys.
Thank you guys.
Bye.
Bye.